Please welcome our moderator for tonight, award-winning producer Adam Fields. And then we have the Oscar-winning editor, Zach Staenberg, that did the editing for The Matrix. I'm sure you remember. And then we have our director, Alessio Della Valle. Please welcome them.
Well, thank you guys both for coming and spending time to talk about the movie. So I have so many questions I want to ask you about the film. I'll see if I can try and put them in order. But like, my first impression, and I've watched the movie twice now, is that almost every shot or every scene felt like painting. And it reminded me sort of a little bit of Tony Scott, Man on Fire, a little bit of Robert Rodriguez, Sin City, with a little bit of, Tarantino, a little bit of everything. So was that intentional, that you're making a movie about the art world and every shot and every scene feels like a painting? Or is that my imagination?
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you. Yes, that's a really good question. It was intentional.
It's fantastic. It's like you want to frame any shot. You could take it and blow it up and frame it on the wall.
Thank you. That's really kind of you. I made very bold choices of, for example, only using primary colors. I told every department that you can only use red, blue, and yellow.
So, I presume everyone that's here has been involved in making movies in some fashion or other, and we know that movies are the collective work of a large team of people. You put together one of the greatest teams of key crew and cast that I can imagine. Academy Award-winning editor, the composer was just, the music was fantastic, production design, and then you get this incredible cast. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and guess you didn't have some huge Netflix budget, throw millions of dollars everyone to get them to do your picture. I presume we haven't met before tonight. I thought, oh, you must have been friends with all these people, done movies with them in the past. And I'm going through my IMDb and go, no, I'm not working with any of these people. How did you get all these incredible people cast and amazing, key crew to do this? I'm in awe. Very impressed.
We just sent them the script, and thank God, luckily they responded to the material. And
that's amazing. I mean, to get through the agents and all of that, and you have to read and go, and we probably can't really afford to pay you what you normally make, and you still got them. I just think that's incredible. It's something you should be amazingly proud of, and I'm incredibly jealous.
Thank you. Yes, that's true. We just sent them the screenplay, and luckily everyone responded, both cast and crew, and they were all really enthusiastic and coming. We basically flew to set people from more than 10 countries, really. It was an incredible thing that assembled together because the people responded to the screenplay.
And where did this idea come from? I mean, it's sort of not your most conventional story. Why the Maryland? And there must have been something you've experienced in your life that this was the impetus for you to write this.
I really like movies that are not necessarily realistic, or I really like movies in which you make a journey, you spend 2 hours in another world, in a different reality, sort of speak. So I didn't go for a realistic New York. I went more for it's a pure trip in the world of imagination. I imagine what it would be like for example, to have a diner in which all the waiters are dead rock stars. And I thought it'd be so cool to try that. It's believable, it could exist, but it doesn't exist. So I wanted to create it. And this is for all the things that are there. it's believable that an artist would shoot on a canvas. It doesn't exist, but it could exist.
Well, no, we don't. Well, maybe we just don't know.
Right. And the Marilyns, because I was really interested in what is iconic. I was really interested in what creates an icon. What is an icon? And what is pop culture? And I was really interested in the process. I said this before, I'm gonna say it again. I was really interested in the process of taking something that is iconic and making it become something else. So Warhol took the photo of Marilyn, who was clearly an icon, and made it into an artwork that became an icon in itself, and yet it is something else.
As you did with the Campbell Soup can.
Yes.
So I guess you start with pop culture, and then things within pop culture become iconic.
Yes. And that's why I chose every.
Well, Zach, why don't you? I don't know. Is this on? Yeah. Zach, this was a first-time working relationship. How did you guys work together? I mean, he's got this incredible vision, and you've done such amazing work. I mean, you look at The Matrix, and it is the gold standard for editing. I can't think of anything other than going back to Verna Fields on Jaws. But tell me about what that was like working with him for the first time, and he's got this very clear vision, and there's so many things I still want to talk about. So, but how did you guys work together? Like, I guess rock, like drummer and bass, you know. Work.
Is this working? Oh yeah, it's working. Okay. Well, you know, first of all, partly in answer to your question you were asking Alessio before about how he put together the crew. I mean, we live in a kind of odd time in Hollywood now where you have all these big blockbuster movies. And there's a real mentality among people like me and DPs, et cetera, and actors too, you know, one for them, one for me. And this was a one for me movie. Everyone liked the script. Everyone feels like there's some potential to do something original. And, you know, most people who work in film are creative and they want to do something original. So I think they are anyway. It's funny. So actually, I don't. Originally, this movie kept expanding as it went along. I can tell you. Well, when you say Alessio, it started out at least budgetarily a bit smaller than it ended up. We should really mention Martha Capello, our producer, who just really was one of these people. You know, we often think of producers as telling you no. She tried to figure out a way to make it happen all the time. And after Alessio had finished shooting the movie, she had finished shooting it, producing it, and they looked at they had a cut that was put together in Italy, and it didn't work as well as they thought it could work. And Alessio always knew he wanted to have this American sensibility, this very strong. So they called me up to ask me if I would take a look at it, read it, and so I started working with it after they finished shooting. And I had the advantage of understanding what worked and what didn't work. I loved the script initially, the original script. And yeah, we took it from there.
So you sort of came in sort of in the second half of it, and probably gave you a lot more objectivity because you hadn't been living through it and like, oh, I love that shot so much. You could just have a really clear sort of lens about it.
Well, yes and no. I mean, basically, what I did was I treated it as though I came in at the beginning. I started from scratch, but I hadn't been part of it from the year, and I did have the objectivity of seeing what you might call a rough assembly of the movie. You could see what was good and what wasn't good, and where it was lagging, and where you're losing, and where something was working or not working.
And how did that work for you, bringing in someone sort of in the second half of the game to come in on the movie?
It went great. I think Zach is a genius, and he and I collaborated a lot on. We were creating and keeping on having these aha moments, or we should really try this, or we should really do that, and getting excited of each other's idea. And I really felt like we were two minds going in the same direction.
I also noticed, and we were talking about it before this started, that no one changes their clothes in the entire movie. Which the only movie
Alessio and I used to talk about that.
I only movie that I could remember that was, and I know you said there was a lot of others, was the Clint Eastwood, like, Sergio Leone movies, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. No one changed their clothes. And you just look at those movies and go, God, please, can't they ever take a shower? What was your intention in doing that? Because I realized that you've done that in this, and I think you've mentioned other movies that I hadn't thought of. You said Pulp Fiction, I think. No one changes their clothes?
And Clockwork Orange.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that. And why did you want to do that?
Because it makes the characters become more iconic again. I was interested in this process, and also it's sort of in my list for me as an audience. It made them feel more believable and more real than in reality. So because Clint Eastwood is always wearing the same poncho for months, you don't think it's months. It sort of makes it become an icon in a way.
That's a really
with
interesting.
that hat and that poncho. So I wanted to do the same choice.
That's really interesting. And then there's a sense in the movie that I didn't really pick up until I watched it the second time about time. You kind of really play with time in the movie. It's not linear. Or did I watch that?
Zach can elaborate more on this, but let me just say that yes, I wrote a non-linear screenplay, a non-linear story, and I was interested in using time as a work of art, and how do we perceive time? Because a lot of times in movies, we are told who the character is, what he wants, what he did before, where he wants to go. They're sort of like pre-cooked and prepared for the audience to digest. But in life, when you meet someone, you don't know what they did before, and you'll never know. So I wanted to begin the movie in the same way, and like, boom, here you are. They're in this moment of their lives, and from this moment on, we carry on. And please, Zach, I'm sure you have a lot to add to this.
Well, that was one of the big challenges of editing the movie was you guys probably noticed you're seeing a lot of scenes again from another angle, almost from another point of view. So I was sort of struggling with Alessio. I was sort of struggling to sort it out for the audience because I think it's very important in a movie for the audience for always to be grounded, knowing where they are, why people are doing what they're doing, etc. So we really had to organize the material in a way that would help do that. And I kind of stumbled across this idea because I love the art world too. One of the things that attracted me to the movie, and I wanted to keep everything we did to the movie was with that in mind, at least for my work. And I loved a lot of the artwork in the movie. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but when John walks into the gallery to, at one point, he passes a neon sign that says art plus life equals chaos. And I really liked that. And I mentioned how much I liked it to Alessio. And he told me that was one of his favorite motifs for the whole movie. And I said, bingo, let's use that to organize the movie. And then, so the first time you see art plus life, the sign lights up. I don't know if you guys noticed, but the second time you see it, you're seeing it from the reverse. You're seeing it backwards. And now you're seeing a collection of scenes from another angle. And the third time you see it is when pretty much everything is going to start colliding. And so we see art plus life and then plus chaos lights up. So that becomes, I think a lot of people actually get it, but if not, I think it's subliminal. I think it works that way. So, but the organization of time was something that was a constant struggle, but it was fun.
It's great the way that works because it's very subtle, but then you stop and you think about it. And you go, you've repeated things. We've seen the same thing multiple times.
Right.
You're kind of reminiscent of, like, I don't know, Kubrick's The Killing, where you see the same robbery 3 different times. Or
Right.
I just watched Ridley Scott's The Duel this weekend.
Right.
And you see the same thing too many times. But it's great when you can go back and try and show the same sequence from different points of view. You see different things each time. And I think that's really, really clever and really masterful filmmaking.
Well, a lot of the movies about different how people perceive things differently. You know, the different characters. So
And it is also about perception, because you ask two friends to tell you the same event that they both witnessed, and they tell you two different stories. It's almost like two different things happened. So everyone filters everything through their own perception, right? So I wanted to portray this, and how it's basically the movie is 3 days in the life of John, and then you go back and it's 3 days in the life of Michael, and then you go back and it's how John and Michael interact with each other.
It's just so great.
oftentimes without realizing they're interacting.
Right.
Yeah.
And you have the benefit. You had such a great cast and so many great actors that each one of them captivates you in their own way. So you're attracted. You want to follow Emil Hirsch's story, but then you're sort of intrigued by what's going on with Jonathan's story, and it's just a really masterful film. So, do we have time to let the audience have questions, or I don't know how, because I can go on. I have so many more things I'd like to talk about, but I don't know how we are with time. Do we want to? Someone have a question?
So yeah, after the credits, they sort of set it up that we think that this woman is like the one survivor, and she's gonna have a good life, and then the guy's like, let's follow her. Was that from a different point in time, and now we're ending it there, or is that sort of like a cliffhanger? Is there a sequel?
Take that, Alessio.
Yes, it's said to be continuing. It's sort of what I said before. We begin, and it's not the beginning because they are alive and they already had a life before. And also at the end, I wanted them to continue, carry on their lives. She gets, and he follows her.
And it is in continuity. It is exactly where it should be. It's the very end of the action, but kind of is what Alessio was just saying. It's something's going to happen. The story's not over yet, and because the story in our lives never ends, right? Until we die.
Hello. I think to me, in my eyes, what caught my eye was the lighting and a lot of shadows that were excellent, and smooth camera angles, and a transition from one scene to the next wasn't choppy. It was smooth. And
Thank you.
but really, to me, what really makes, not only that it was good performances, but I think like the director had said, it is about the art world, but at the same time, it's about the color. The color really made the film and the characters pop. If you take that away, then it's just a movie. I think that's what made it special, was that the lighting, the shading, and everything. It's gritty, it's grimy, it's not perfect, and that's art. But at the same time, it's very beautiful because of, you get a lot of reds and blues, and I like the grittiness in certain shots, and it's very well lit. That's all.
Was there a question in there? All good.
I was just saying I appreciate, and that's what made the film. A lot of people don't like to shoot having a lot of shadow. Was that your objective, to make a character be more even a character in the scene and in the motion and in the projection of not only what they're delivering as lines, but you take that shadowing away from just hitting your eyes and your face and your cheeks, and it expresses the body movement. Was that what you were going for?
100%. Because I started from the characters from the noirs, the classical noirs. So John is the anti-hero, Michael is the antagonist, Sarah is the good wife, Kate is the femme fatale, and Vincent, Jeremy Piven, is the innocent. But in noirs, it's also the style. You need to have the chiaroscuro in the dark and the light. You need to have reflections. There's always reflections and mirrors. I asked to have water on the streets so that the streets would reflect the lights. So yes, there is a conscious choice that was done by the art department and all the other departments, and of course, the cinematography as well. Yes, I said this needs to be darker because it's a noir. We're doing darker scenes. Yet it's a pop colorful noir because it doesn't need to be black and white to be noir. This is not what defines it per se, at least in what are called the neo-noirs. Obviously, the classical noirs were black and white. But they had this use of shadows, strong use of shadows and contrast, and the blacks were really black. And so we did go for that.
Yeah, I actually appreciate that a lot because it's how you light set. It's going to determine what can you actually feel the emotion, and it helps with the projection of the scene. And that was my question: is that if that was what you're going for? You answered it. I appreciate you.
I actually made a book for each head of department. I made a book of references of paintings from museums photos I took in museums that I gave to the cinematographer. I gave another book of references to every department had an entire book of photos.
Oh, I see those.
That I took, in museums and in life.
That sounds fantastic. Sir, back.
It's on Hulu. It was released theatrically in the US in October by Saban Films and Lionsgate. And it just premiered on Hulu last weekend.
So tell your friends.
And it's on the Academy screening room right now.
Sir?
The soundtrack. Can you tell us more about how you got the songs?
We should really answer the Chu because Zach had a strong input.
Alessio
on this.
gave me a lot of leeway. I like music a lot. So we looked very carefully. We found a lot of songs that I thought worked, played them for Alessio. He generally almost always liked what we found. I worked with the music supervisor. You have to work things out with a budget. There's certain things we had to replace with others, but we always did it. I think what you're liking is a certain sensibility that's consistent. I'm very fond of the soundtrack in the film.
Yeah, it's amazing, but everything in the movie feels consistent. The color palette, the editing, the music, the performances. It has an incredible flow. I mean, that's just really, really impressive.
Thank you. And me and Zach, we have the same music taste. We like the same things. So that was easy. And of course, he would come with ideas like the Velvet Underground, whom I loved. I've seen Lou Reed. I was telling him live in Italy, and not only that. I mean, the first record was produced by Andy Warhol, so there was again the play on the play, the icon, the icon out of an icon.
I tried to give, when you mentioned the Velvet Underground, one of my favorite bands, the two songs associated with Michael. One's Velvet Underground, one's Nico, who was a prominent singer for the Velvet Underground. She recorded herself too. And we were also, in keeping with the whole idea of the structure of the movie where you're seeing scenes different times, we found the Wolf Mother song, The Joker and the Thief in the Night. And I was able to use that. I think we used it 4 times, but each time it's working in a slightly different way, but it always grounds you in a certain way, which I think is pretty interesting.
From a combination of just for the visual part or just as the ideas? Visual part. Oh, for example, I had seen this painting in the Tate in London that it was all blue. It was all different kinds of blue. It was every possible kind of blue. And I was showing this to a cinematographer in another department. I was saying, we need to do a diner that is completely blue and have the Cadillac painted in a certain kind of blue and the wall being another kind of blue. And I wanted to put actually the waiter in another kind of blue. We had found a blue sweater for Kurt Cobain, which he actually had. But then we found the other jacket was cooler, so we changed it. But intentionally, I wanted to make that scene in every shade of blue possible. Paintings for sure. But not only that, also just things that I saw in life around the world, really, and I took photos and I put together to create a new meaning, a new content. And also just I decided there's only going to be the 3 primary colors in every shot unless something happens in their lives. So that also goes in a strong, and I wanted to have neon lights everywhere. So I designed the Rockstar's Diner myself, because as I was writing, I would close my eyes and I would see the things already made. So I just had to draw and then show it to people and have it done. Just deciding, red, yellow, and blue, it makes you go in a strong direction. And then there's only like green when she breaks up with him. So other colors enter when their emotions change, when something disruptive happens in their lives. There's also a journey in the elements in a certain way, in the same way.
Was that Nightmare Alley they're doing that too? Yeah, which, the original movie, Tyrone Power, is a black and white movie. So, people have seen Nightmare Alley, they should go watch the original Tyrone Power version, because I think they're both great. But yeah, I've heard that they're going to do a black and white version. Oh, is it? Well, excuse to watch it again.
I was really interested in what they did when I basically came to realize every movie I like is either a noir or based on the rules of noirs. Even sci-fi movies that people don't think as noirs, they actually, in terms of characters, like Blade Runner, is pure noir. Because there's a femme fatale, there's a robot who's a femme fatale, and he's always wearing the same coat in the entire Blade Runner. They have the same clothes from beginning to the end, and it doesn't, right? It's not a problem. It actually makes him look cooler, right?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it before, but yeah.
So I was really interested in this thing coming from noirs, yes.
So, how did you come up with adding the storyline of Bruce Lee and being like water and incorporation into Jeremy Piven's character? But that was really intriguing.
I've always been a fan of Bruce Lee since I was a kid. I think like most of the kids my generation, we wanted to be Bruce Lee. It was just the coolest thing ever.
I wanted to be the Green Hornet.
It was just super cool, and I use that speech because when he says "be like water," so Jeremy's character Vincent is sort of a symbol of water. He flows, just like Michael, who's the scorpion, who's water, and then the house at the end goes on fire. So there is a journey in the elements, very subtle. But I really like that philosophy, and I wrote a letter to the daughter of Bruce Lee, and she responded. And
You did?
I did.
That's incredible. Fantastic.
I love that you casted Maria Grazia Cucinotta as your mom. It's very unusual to see her not even say one word. I was wondering why you chose for her not to say one word, and generally she always appears as, very sexy, very Italian, and she was totally dressed down. Why, as a mother, you thought that she had to look that old when she's so beautiful? Just wondering why those two things.
This is a very good question. Because I wanted to create a character of a mother for him that doesn't see him. So when his father throws, go ahead.
No, it was so interesting.
Yeah, so when his father throws the Yes, the crayons.
Crayons
into
in the fire.
Into the fire, where it ends in the end, right? She looks down. And then again, she's always looking down. In other words, that's a physical embodiment of she doesn't see him. She does not acknowledge her son. Up until her arc. So I wanted her to talk with her face without words. That's why she doesn't talk. And at the end, now that you've seen it, when he kills everyone, that's the first time that she sees him, she acknowledges him. Now, when he becomes the head of the mafia, when he kills everyone, when he becomes a Scorpio, that's when she sees him for the first time, and she looks at him straight in the eye and she nods. So this is her arc, and obviously Zach can add more to this because we worked on it. But this is the arc that I wrote for the character. So when I met her, I told her, "You're not gonna talk."
That must have been an interesting meeting.
She loved it. She's never done this before. She was like, "I want to do it."
That's great. That's great.
Because her arc is with her eyes. And it's about being acknowledged from our parents, which is something that to a different degree everyone has experienced.
Hi, I just wanted to ask to both of you, one big thing that you learned while you were making it. So of course, for Zach, it was in the post-production. For Alessio, while you were making the movie, one big moment where you're like, wow, I'm learning a lot through this experience. And then one thing that you learn after, once the movie is out, people are reviewing, or you're in the movie theater and you're seeing people's reactions. And one thing you learn in the making, one thing you learn after. Thank you.
Zach, do you want to go first?
Go ahead. That's a good one. That's a good question.
It's a good question, but I don't have the answer. Because it's not a one thing process. I think I learned hundreds of thousands of things, both making it and after I made it, and I still am learning.
You look at it and go, God, I wish we had done that instead, or I wish we had shot one more take of that. I know I go back and look at my films where I see them on late night TV and I go, oh God, all I can remember is how sick I was that day, or how difficult I was, or God, I wish I had fought harder for more money to make that better. I usually just see what I wish I had done better.
I didn't have that because I was lucky enough that we were prepping on these films and on these studios in this lot. So I took the time. I had this idea. I thought, we are on the actual location. I can shoot it. So I took a 5D camera and 2 theater actors from Sofia, and I shot all the scenes I wanted to shoot, and we edited them. So instead of doing storyboarding, I did a video board. I don't know how to call it. So I saw how they would look before. So I didn't have that thing. But I certainly learned so many things. Every person you meet teaches you something. Every single experience you do,
and everyone then has a different interpretation of what you did. I think we talked about this. I did a little movie years ago called Donnie Darko, and every day I see some blog shows up in the morning with 20 theories about why something happened. And I'm like, no, we just ran out of light that day. Or we only had the actor for that day, or but everyone creates all these theories and stories behind it, and it's fascinating. I go, nope, none of that's true.
This is very, very true. Very, very true.
So in 10 years, people will look at your movie and they're going to have a whole nother sort of theology and philosophy about why you did things. You'll go, nah.
This is very true because it's what we do is grounded in reality, whether it was sunny or rainy, or whether it was cold or warm. It's based on real practical elements,
right? Or the actor was tired, or whatever. You were in overtime, and it has nothing to do with a whole vision about it.
That's also what is beautiful about once you create something. People see whatever they want in it, and that's what's great, which is because everyone can see and is entitled and should see whatever they want about a movie, a book, or a piece of music, because everyone has his own taste and perception and experience.
That's why it's called art.
Yes.
Hi, I was wondering what made you choose the colors that you used in the paint for the Paz Vega love scene, and also I noticed that in Emil Hirsch's paintings, as he got angrier, the thickness of the paint he threw got heavier and thicker. What made you choose this, and why?
So when they make love, again, it's primary colors. It's just blue, red, and yellow. Of course, when you mix them together, some other colors are created. And it was, I designed that scene because it's a movie about art, even though it's not a documentary, so it's not in a preachy way. I wanted people to enjoy it. I wanted to have action scenes and fun scenes and scenes where people jump off buildings, and it's just really fun to do. But for the love scene, I wanted them to enter into the artwork, to become art, to melt with the paint. That's why I wrote this very poetic scene of them making love. It's a moment in their memory, in their past, in which they remember how happy they were, which we all have had. At the beginning of a love story, everything is wonderful and full of love and full of poetry. And he remembers in his dream, this moment in which he made love with her, and they experiment, and they played with paint, but in a very romantic and poetic way.
And I always felt that maybe at an early point in his career, like when they first met, John was he was really a great forger, and also he understood the art world. She's of the art world. He probably was an aspiring artist at one point. That was his studio. That's what we never really identified it, but I always took it that way.
Anybody else?
Was there a second question?
The second question is that I noticed that as Emil Hirsch's character got more and more angry, the thickness of the painting that was thrown kept changing. Was that intentional? And the colors kept changing into darker forms of red, and they started out as yellow. I noticed that.
Yes, and I actually created different words. So the red, blue, and yellow thing applies to John. For Michael, his word is black. So I asked our department to paint the walls black, but I wanted to have the reflections of noir. And how do you do that? So we added some aluminum powder to the paint to make the walls shiny. So all the walls have this reflection, and he's dressed in black, and his word is black and white because he lives that mental, emotional reality.
Are you a painter yourself?
I am.
Oh, you are. Okay. And also, the scorpions you used for the scene, those were they real? Those were real? Or
The scorpions is CGI.
I thought that was my ex-wife.
And I use the scorpion metaphor because it's a story about accepting your own nature. So the scorpion has to bite the frog, despite it doesn't want to. And so Michael has to become the son of his father, even though he wants to be an artist. So one of the themes of the story is really the arc that I designed for these characters is to accept your own nature, accept who you are. So all the characters at the end, they learn to embrace themselves.
wonderful. Thank you.